Hello and welcome to another managerial special from the Honest Football Podcast. They're coming thick and fast now the January transfer window's closed. And this time it's probably one of the biggest clubs in the EFL in terms of being a recent Premier League team. And that is AFC Bournemouth, who at about 7 o'clock this morning or 8 o'clock decided to part company with Jason Tindall, which is lovely for people who are working like us. But obviously, Jason Tindall has been let go from Bournemouth after 5 games without a win. I'll take you through the statement quickly as Charlie and Craig are with me as always to discuss it. We'll discuss the previous man and who we think is going to be in the role next. So the Bournemouth statement states, it is a decision which was not taken lightly given Jason's outstanding commitment to the club as a player, assistant and a manager. However, recent performances and results have fallen well short of the board's expectation. They felt a change is needed now to give the club the best possible chance of achieving the goals that were clearly set out last summer. That's very carefully worded, that bit. So they thank Jason for his services for 22 years at Bournemouth, but of course he is there no more. So very quickly, obviously we talked early in the season in our prediction shows about the fact that Jason Tindall was one of the longest EFL managers without a defeat at the start of the year. Just one defeat in their first 14 games. So Craig, how have we got to this position after 5 without a win where Jason Tindall is sacked from a side in the playoffs?
Quite simply, they've been found out. Teams have found out how to beat them. I don't think Bournemouth had a plan B to the way that they played. Because I always felt like when Jason Tindall got the manager job from Eddie Howe, I just thought, well, obviously he was a previous assistant manager to Eddie Howe. I thought they were just going to carry on the same. All right, he might have a different tweak to his philosophy compared to Eddie Howe's, but it still felt the same. And I was quite surprised that he got the same because Bournemouth are quite keen. Like they do stick by their managers. Obviously, look at Eddie Howe. Obviously, they brought him back after that spell of Burnley, so they stuck by him all the way up to the Premier League, and obviously even all the way to they got recently relegated last year. So it surprised me that he's gone, but it was a risk to start with him no managerial experience taking a top Championship club.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think I'd probably agree with you. It's the timing more than the sacking that surprised me, that it's come so quickly given Bournemouth's history. But Charlie, coming over to you, there's a couple of weird little events here. We obviously talked about it being a risk. We have got to mention the fact, something that's been hotly debated off camera in the last few weeks, the fact that his assistant manager was sold off to Newcastle, which might lead to another situation later down the line. But what do you make of Jason Tindall's departure, and do you think it's too soon?
It's tough, really, because, Bournemouth have lost 8 this season, but 4 of those have come in the last 4. So, you could say they're on the slide. Up to that point, I know you can't take out those 4 games, but up to that point, they were in good form. And actually, look at the teams below them. So, obviously, they're in 6th at the minute. But if you look below them, Borough, Blackburn, Bristol and Stoke are all below them. But it's not as if there's a clear team that's romping up the league since Christmas who is a threat to them. So, I think, is it premature? Possibly. I agree with Craig. It was always going to be a bit of a risk. However, we're going to probably talk about who's left. Is it going to be more than risk than some of the other people they're talking about bringing in? I don't know, to be honest. I feel like there's obviously a bit of an issue. They've conceded more goals in the last sort of 5 games than any other team just after half time. So maybe that you can pin a bit of that on the manager in the sense of how is he setting them up from, the game just before, concentration levels, are they coming out with the right message in their ears and stuff? So, maybe that has to lay blame on him a little bit there. So I don't know. I'm a bit of a mixed feeling on this one. I can see it, but I can also think it's a little bit harsh.
Yeah, completely agree. And come back to you, Craig, because you missed out on the transfer special. I'll let you have your say on this one, which is, if you're someone like Shane Long, for example, who's joined on Monday night, what are you thinking now?
Did that manager actually pick me to join the club? I don't know. Because there's a reason why this certain manager wants to be at the club. They do need to score goals. They knew Josh King was going to go.
Yeah.
They brought him in as a good replacement. I think it's a good sign, to be fair. Shane Long needs that run of games. If he stays fit, he's a good striker. He'd be very good for Bournemouth. But now it's not under Jason Tindall. And why is it every manager first? I'll go back to Luton. Because obviously, like George Moncur came in after Nathan Jones left, but it was a Nathan Jones signing. So it was weird how it pans out. But yeah, I think Shane Long will be frustrated.
Yeah, it's got to be a hard situation for a player. And Charlie, coming over to you, I'm going to pick up on something Craig said, which was about being found out. Now, it's something that the fans have related to a lot in recent weeks, particularly in the post-match reports and bits like that pass, it's a lovely game. But as Bournemouth often having more possession, they're not often dominating the shot count. Is it fair to say that teams have just found out how to stifle them? I mean, we saw that with Luton the other week.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think even in our last prediction show, we spoke about that Bournemouth had in the game prior to the Sheffield Wednesday one, had a lot more possession, a lot less shots. So I think teams are set up for that. We obviously then mentioned, as happened last night, Wednesday really conceded a bit of possession to hit them on the counter, and so it was. However, it's very hard, and I'm sure we've all been around football clubs at whatever level. It's very hard to suddenly just change your philosophy like that as well. You know, it isn't a bit like FIFA where you can just drop into a diamond or something and suddenly, you know, because you're in control of all of it. You are relying on players buying into that system. You are trying to convince them that, okay, this is what we did up to this point. Now we've got to change it. So I can see both sides of it. Yes, obviously there was an issue where there was no plan B. However, I think you can't be naive enough to think that you can't just flip it. You have to build up that momentum. You have to build up that coaching across those few weeks of, right, actually in this situation, we're going to do this, this, and this instead of what we did before. So I don't know. I don't think he was really given the time to implement a slightly different philosophy and different style. But, you know, we mentioned this in all the episodes. It's about expectation. And maybe Bournemouth thought our expectations to be back in the Premier League. We can't afford to give him that time to suddenly try and bring in a whole new philosophy. So I don't know. But whoever comes in is surely going to have to do that anyway. So it's a bit of a catch-22.
These owners, obviously, that just recently been relegated from the Premier League, do they not realise how tight the Championship can be? And once again, it's tight. Like, 2 out of the 3 former Premier League clubs are now sacked the manager.
I was going to say, we've seen the same with Watford already, haven't we?
Exactly.
Very similar position.
Like, obviously, fair play to Norwich. Obviously, at the moment, they're running away with the league, but you never know. But go on a bad run, and then it will go wrong again. So I just feel like I think the expectation is so high. I know they got the parachute payment, but they didn't really spend much during the brief break in the summer. So it felt the same, even though it's near enough the same same players from last season. It still felt a bit of the same, and it kind of added to it. Like that poor run of form at the end of last season has kind of carried on, got to a certain moment, and it's just completely switched off. Being found out, and with their style of play, obviously we've seen a certain coach before, in Graham Jones, who likes all the possession, but we've seen it in the Luton game, and I've seen it in the last 2 defeats to Derby and defeats to Reading. It's all good passing about, but you've got to put the ball in the net.
And the final question, before we move on to the new man, or who we think it will be, and all of the contenders, and what we expect for Bournemouth for the season, of course, I'll come back to you again, Craig. We've got to remember there's a lot of emotion around at the moment because they were on a poor run, and a lot of the fans saying they're glad to see him gone if they're in that way inclined. But it's got to be remembered, as the statement states, 22 years of service. He was a key figure as a player. He was important in that -17 season in League Two when they nearly fell out the Football League. And he's been a key part of their rise through the leagues as well. So once people look back on it after this emotion, he's got to be remembered fondly, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's got to be remembered fondly like he would with Eddie Howe. Bournemouth, obviously, in that time in the -17 points, obviously were in deep trouble, and it was a horrible time, as much as obviously we know from our own club. But from -17 all the way up to the Premier League, it's an unbelievable effort. And Eddie Howe takes credit, and you've got to give Jason Tindall credit as well. Obviously, this is right-hand man, and excellent service. And that's what you want in the football club. You want that loyalty. And 22 years is it's a fantastic achievement.
Yeah, completely agree. But you know why we're here? We're not just here to talk about the man who's gone. We're here to talk about what might be happening next. Now, I'm not going to comment on the front runner for the job as it stands in the odds at the moment, because it's as much a surprise to me as it will be to many other fans of a certain other Championship club. Because the favourite at the moment for the job is Jonathan Woodgate, who joined Bournemouth a few weeks ago, having been sacked by Middlesbrough previously. It's almost identical to what Graham Jones has done, going to Bournemouth and then leaving for Newcastle. Just behind him, the other 2 heavy favourites are John Terry and Frank Lampard, 2 former Chelsea legends. Lampard obviously just let go by Chelsea, and John Terry, who's been linked with a few Championship jobs recently. Eddie Howe's 4th favourite with a potential link back. I think that's just the bookmakers stating an obvious. And then you've got your regulars, the Paul Cooks, the Danny Cowleys, the Tony Pulis, Nathan Jones, that's popped up in the Cardiff one. But looking ahead to the new man, Charlie, of that list, or even some others, because the one I think is the best for the job isn't listed there, who would you like to see, and who do you think will be the next Bournemouth manager?
Oh, I don't know. This is tough. I think it shouldn't be. I mean, Danny Cowley in that, very good in what he does. Complete antithesis of the way Bournemouth play. So for me, you talk about not having a plan B, that would be too radical. There's too many names in there, you know, Pulis, etc. I know he lives in Bournemouth, but still, I think it'll end up being Jonathan Woodgate, which could be the biggest snaky move in the history of football, to be brutally honest. But, you know, is that his fault? I don't know. But
he might get topped by Graham Jones a week later at Newcastle,
that's
so it
true.
might be all right.
However, I mean, I say that his record at Middlesbrough, really, given the resources he had, he lost more games than he won. 16 out of 41 games, 21% win ratio. I don't want to go too Premier League about this because we're not a Premier League podcast. However, you have to mention Frank Lampard. He is a heavy favourite. taken out, the Premier League chat of this season. Last season, in limited resources, with a younger squad, in maybe a more similar situation to Bournemouth. Obviously, I'm not comparing Bournemouth and Chelsea, but what I'm saying is he had limitations at Chelsea when he was there. He did an okay job. Is that going to be enough? I don't know. But you then look at his time at Derby, and that would give me a bit more confidence in his ability to do it. So I think sometimes there's a lot of media talk about Lampard at Chelsea. He did a very good job at Derby. Admittedly, similar situation for me. Expectation to get in the Premier League. Well-supported club, well-funded and all of that. So actually, probably in terms of that, if you were to put him on the spot now, he's probably the clearer one, and he's got a future in football. I don't want to see any of these older heads again, this merry-go-round that we keep talking about. I don't think they're good for Bournemouth. Bournemouth are a club who invest in managers, apart from obviously Tindall now. But so for me, probably Frank Lampard as it stands.
Fair enough. And that might be the first championship job that's come up this season where Charlie hasn't said he'd like to see Paul Cook. So that's got to be a miracle. Coming over to you, Craig, what would you say for the same situation?
This is a tough one, to be honest, because I generally do think Bournemouth need to change their style of play. I really do. Because it doesn't seem to work. That phase is gone.
I was just going to say, before you go, Craig, and the reason I think you'll find it so difficult, the same as all of us, is normally when we do this, it's about a club that's trying to fight off relegation. It's a club that's in and around the bottom half of the table. We're talking about a team that are hunting for promotion to get back to the Premier League in the automatic, we're expected to be in the automatic places. That actually makes it a lot harder because you're not after a quick fire sale sort of job, fire putting out job. You want a bit more of an investment in that, don't you? So, sorry, Craig, that's all I was going to say. It's tough for that reason to think who we might be.
Yeah, because they want to aim for promotion, and obviously they want to get back in the Premier League. That's where the money is. And Lampard, I said this in the other another show. Lampard wouldn't surprise me, but I don't think he'll take the job so soon. When he's got stick with all these players, he hasn't got like a transfer window to actually try and get someone in from Chelsea or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I generally don't know.
It's a really hard one, isn't it?
It's a hard one. I don't see John Terry leaving. I know you want to be your own man, but look what happens when assistant managers turn into managers. We've just literally seen that with Jason Tindall and Graham Jones. So I don't see it being John Terry. I generally don't know.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? Because as Charlie mentions, and you're clearly struggling with as well, and I have been most of the day too, is you're looking for that manager to get them into the Premier League. And of those top 6 or 7 candidates, bar Eddie Howe, who's there for obvious reasons, no one's got that experience. So it's so hard to try and make a judgment on it. My cynical view, and I will get your opinion on this, Charlie, as well, is why would Jonathan Woodgate have been brought in 2 or 3 weeks ago in the middle of this bad run?
Well, it's funny you say that, and I'm going very, very quickly off topic, but even, for example, David Dunn left Barrow and is now the assistant at Fleetwood. And what I'm saying is, I suppose, there is a dynamic of if you've been at the top of the tree, you've been a manager, regardless of what club it is, to then be under someone, it is tough because, naturally, I think you're going to think, and it's not just in football, I suppose, it's any job. If you was to, it's not a demotion, but you take a position maybe lower than where you were before, you are naturally thinking, well, I probably wouldn't do that. If I was in charge, I would do this. Whereas if you're an assistant manager, naturally anyway, like you say, for example, John Terry, I suppose you're buying into the manager's philosophy and you're taking that along with him. So it would seem an odd appointment if you didn't have a long-term view of, right, actually, it's probably not going the way we want to with Jason Tindall. So at least we've got a ready replacement. My worry is that his record at Middlesbrough, given what he had, wasn't great. Do you know what I mean? So people talk about Gary Monk, for example, people like that as well. I think it's, well, yeah, I wouldn't touch, as I've alluded to in my Sheffield Wednesday episode, I wouldn't touch Gary Monk, a barge pole, But the point is that unless you're bringing in someone like Jonathan Woodgate to really overhaul the team as an assistant, that's very hard to do from that position. So have they lined him up? Probably. If they have, I like Bournemouth as a club. If they have, I'd lose a lot of respect for them because I think that's such a rubbish move in the way they've done it.
And I'll be fair here, before we move on to what we think of Bournemouth for the season and give my view on the next manager, I would actually be aiming for 2 targets who are both listed down the order at 20-1. So the first one, which is an interesting name and has got the previous experience of taking a side up, is David Wagner, formerly of Huddersfield, of course. Left Schalke in September after an interesting stint there.
Disastrous. It was disastrous.
I was trying to cover my back for my suggestion there. But the other one is a man you'll know well, Craig, which is Steve Robinson, who left and resigned from Motherwell, but has got previous championship experience as a player, is very highly regarded as a young coach, and sort of in playing style is that stopgap between the sort of the direct style, the Pulis, the whatever, and the footballing style of the likes of Tindall and Eddie Howe. He's sort of that medium stopgap for me. So as a former Luton man, what is your thought on that one, Craig?
They're 2 good shouts, to be fair. 2 very good shouts. David Wagner defied all the odds with Huddersfield. Let's be brutally honest. They were tipped to go down and they got by the playoffs. Steve Robinson's an interesting one because obviously I really like Steve Robinson as a player, and you've got to give credit's due what he done at Motherwell. It's a big step up. Championship. And that's not disrespect to the SPL, but that is a bit of a big step. And it's just as much of a risky move as Jason Tindall is. I wouldn't have him that, no disrespect to Stephen Robinson, I wouldn't have him that high up. I could see him building a championship club, like probably a Luton or like that level, small championship club, and build up. Like similar to Nathan Jones. Yeah, small club and build them up. I could see him doing that. I don't think Bournemouth would be the best club for him.
Fair enough. I guess the one thing that's come out of this conversation, and I'll be interested to get Bournemouth fans' views on it, is that we've all sort of edged towards younger managers to an extent, which suggests Bournemouth going down the same pattern again. So we'll wait with interest to see what happens on that front. In terms of the rest of the season, though, you know the questions we always finish on. So one of the interesting things out of this, and I didn't realise until I looked a few hours ago, is that at the start of the season, none of us had Bournemouth to finish in the top 6. None of us. So given what we've said about Jason Tindall sacking, we've got to say it's harsh because by our mind, he's overachieving. But given the fact that none of us had them in the top 6, they are still in 6th place, albeit 9 points off the automatic promotion places and with lots of teams chasing. Charlie, come the end of the season, subject to the appointment you're hoping or thinking is best, will Bournemouth be in the playoffs?
It's so tough. What's saving them at the minute, if I'm honest, is there's no clear team who's putting a run together below them. You know, Reading have just overtaken them, and we spoke about Reading's form and stuff. But below them, like Borough, are so hit and miss at the minute. Blackburn, as I say, you can watch our prediction shows for how erratic Blackburn are. Bristol City, the same. Stoke are in a not great form. Preston, I mean, Barnsley, 36 points. Bournemouth from 42. I won't go much lower than that. I don't know. Will they get there by just virtue of stuttering over the line anyway? Because no one below them is putting a clear run together. However, obviously that could change at any minute. Will they get there? I don't think they've recruited amazingly well, if I'm honest. We spoke about Shane Long. The man who brought him in's gone. What's his mindset going to be? I think that's part of the reason. I don't want to speak on your behalf. Part of the reason I didn't have them in the top 6, when we did our predictions, was actually I don't think they recruited well for a team that had come down from the Premier League. It was always going to be obvious that some of the bigger names were going to go. They need to get lads off the wage bill. So actually, do we look geniuses for this? I'm going to go yes. They're not going to make the playoffs. I genuinely think like Borough, like Neil Warnock, we're big fans of Neil Warnock. He might just turn Borough around. They'll put a run together, and then Bournemouth are then chasing. Before you know it, they're 5 points off the playoffs, and that's a lot of pressure. That's even more pressure what they're under now. So for me, no, they won't make the playoffs.
And Craig, the same question to you. You had them outside the top 6 like me. Will they be in the top 6 come the end of the season if they get the right man?
Well, the reason why I didn't pick Bournemouth in the top 6 because I didn't think the Jason Tindall appointment was the right one. I was sceptical on that. I think we might have said it in the prediction show.
It's one of the few times we agreed.
So it didn't surprise me they'd be up there. Do I think they'll make the playoffs again? I don't think they will. As Charlie said, there's 10 teams in there that could probably get into the playoffs. So, as I say, going bad form, you'll sit right down the table. And we saw that with Nottingham Forest last season. They were in good form and they hit the break, and then they were disastrous and fell out of the playoffs. So I generally don't think Bournemouth will make the playoffs. I think they'll miss out. I think they'll get 7th, to be fair.
I'm going to say the opposite, actually. I think they will sneak 6th on the final day. I am interested to see who the next manager is. Despite all of the other bravado, I do think it will be Frank Lampard, genuinely. So I'm going to ask one more question before we finish. The usual 2-word answer, the subject to the name, of course. Take aside who you'd like it to be. Take aside all the other bits. Who is going to be the next Bournemouth manager? Craig?
I think it'll be Frank Lampard.
Charlie?
Jonathan Woodgate. I've got a horrible feeling. I think I don't agree with it, but I think that's who they'll put.
The cheap option, then?
Essentially, yeah.
Fair enough. I agree with Craig. I think it should be Frank Lampard, and I hope we'll be proven right. But the question is, will he take the job? Will he go back into management that quickly? Or will it be the safe option of Jonathan Woodgate? And why would they have brought him into the club has to be the question. Unless they knew Graham Jones was going a long time ago and they just wanted to get their favourite assistant manager in place in time.
As Charlie alluded earlier, if Graham Jones didn't leave for Newcastle, he would have been the manager.
So that's our view on the ongoing situation at Bournemouth. Of course, let us know what you think down below as a Bournemouth fan. Were they right to let Jason Tindall go? Was it too soon in your eyes? And are you still grateful for the service over the years? Surely he will be remembered fondly overall. If you did enjoy this episode, please do put a thumbs up on it. Subscribe down below for regular content from the podcast. Matchday championship predictions every single match day up in the eye above, as well as the transfer review just a couple of days ago. Thank you to Craig and Charlie for joining me as always. You can follow us over on Twitter at HonestFootball3, and hopefully we'll see you next time.